everybody. I'm the composer and poet Andrew Lloyd Fry, and this is an introduction to Wayne Shorter. So we're going to be talking about his life, some things that are notable about his music, and then some, if you're new to his music, some specific albums that I recommend you start with. So he grew up in New Jersey, which is close to New York. So he was kind of, had just a lot more exposure. Like growing up, he saw Charlie Parker play and stuff like that. So interestingly, in college, he got his degree in music education, and it's a little bit like Herbie, where Herbie Hancock, which I did a video about him if you want to check that out also, where there's a bit of classical music exposure and classical music influence, and getting a music education degree. There was not a jazz department in college at the time, so it's very much classical based. So then his first kind of like big opportunity, or kind of like where he comes into the more public consciousness, is I think I can't remember, it was like 59 or 60. He joins Art Blakey's group. So a couple things interesting about that. In 59, John Coltrane leaves Miles Davis' group, and he recommends Wayne Shorter. And I think Wayne Shorter had approached Miles about it, and he was like, hey, I'll call you if I want you, like something like that. So I think somewhere in there, Wayne Shorter also auditioned for the saxophone position with Monk, Thelonious Monk. And it's actually really good that he didn't get that, because if you're playing with Monk, you're only playing Monk tunes. And Art Blakey, he's not writing any tunes. And, at this point, it was much more common where you're doing albums with originals. So it gave Wayne Shorter this like unique opportunity from an earlier age to be writing and performing and getting that feedback every night, working with Art Blakey. So there's kind of a classic Art Blakey group that he was a part of, and it changed over time, but there was a group with obviously Art Blakey, Freddie Hubbard, Cedar Walton, the bass Jamie Merritt. Anyways, they did albums like Mosaic and Roots and Herbs. So it's kind of like this really pinnacle group. So he did that for a while. And so Miles had George Coleman in the saxophone position, and then for one tour, Sam Rivers, and then he called Wayne Shorter. And I think the story is like, maybe Miles, I think he was like doing something in California, and I can't quite remember. I think it's something where it's like he called him and he's like, hey, I got a show tomorrow, wear a tuxedo, like something like that. And he flew out to California, and no rehearsal, and Wayne Shorter said like he already knew all the tunes just because he had been listening to his music forever. So around that same time as him joining the Miles band, he started recording for Blue Note, and this is I think 1964. And those are the albums I'm going to talk about today, those Blue Note albums. So I think this, 64 to 67, around there, for me is a really, really special time for his music. And it's both the albums he did for Blue Note under his name and the albums he did for the Miles group. So the first one was ESP, this is under Miles' name, Miles the leader. Which I feel like gears are starting to go, but I feel like that group really got somewhere very, very exciting and very interesting on Miles Smiles, Nefertiti, Sorcerer. And specifically he has some really good tunes on Miles Smiles. Nefertiti is like a lot of his tunes, and they're just like amazing. Just the composition that's going on there. So let's talk a little bit about what makes Wayne Shorter unique. And from the beginning, just like first thing is his compositions. And he's I would say my favorite jazz composer. And there's a couple things that are working together to make his music so rich and so good. So the first thing is his harmonic language is just really rich. And in jazz, there's if you start to kind of like figure out and you start to learn a little bit about it, you kind of realize like a lot of it is recycling the same stuff over and over. So like harmonically, a lot of like 2-5-1s or the blues form. I mean, that's like 90% of everything that's written. And his harmonies are just, they're both unexpected and really beautiful at the same time. And it's easy to get unexpected and weird, but there's just like somehow these relationships that he's finding in these chords that we don't normally think these chords go together, and he's proving us wrong. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this came a little later, I feel like his early compositions don't have this, but they have this melodic unity that is really, really interesting and unusual for a lot of jazz tunes. And it's like, he's taking this interval and he's manipulating it, and it's like, oh, there it is again, but it's up a third. And like Nefertiti is like a really good example of that, where it's like everything that's developing is referencing things that have come before, and it's just, when you put those two together, it's just like an amazing combination. So I would say firstly, that is what I love about Wayne Shorter, is his compositions. Second thing is who he played with was often like my favorite musician. So it's like Herbie Hancock on a bunch of his albums. It's like, that's great. Tony Williams, Joe Chambers. So the people around him just, and maybe this is just more personal, but it's like all of his albums are full of like my favorite musicians. So those two together, there's just so much great music that he made. So normally when I talk about albums, I try to keep it to 3. I couldn't do that with him, so it's going to be 5. Sorry. I couldn't pick 3. So first off, and these two kind of go together. So these are his first 2 albums for Blue Note, and he had some other albums under his name before this for a different label. Those for me don't catch my attention, and this is where it really stands out. So this is Night Dreamer and JuJu. Both of these have McCoy Tyner on piano and Elvin Jones on drums. And these were, I think, 1964. They were recorded pretty close together, and it almost feels like part 1, part 2, especially with Elvin and McCoy on all of it. And again, using both of those, this Coltrane echo, which obviously that had like a big influence on him. I would say in these albums, one of the things that's different about these early albums versus the later albums is these, I think, they're at least more normal than some things that came later. Like more just like things you would expect, at least compared to the albums that came after it. And I would say I talked about his melodic brilliance. And I feel like in these albums, that was still developing, and some of the melodic content of the heads that he wrote are not as strong as what came later. So I feel like at this point, it's like the harmony thing was there, and it's not like his melodies are like bad. I'm not saying that, but I just feel like later, they took on like a whole new dimension. On one of these, Lee Morgan is on trumpet, which he was in Art Blakey with Wayne for a while. And then one, there's no trumpet player. Okay, this is Wayne Shorter's most popular album, Speak No Evil. It's not my personal favorite. It's good. So here he's got Herbie, which is awesome. Also has Elvin Jones, Ron Carter from the Miles Davis group. This one feels like he's clicking in a little bit more to his compositional voice. And this is true of a lot of it, but there's just a lot of stuff where it's like these melodies are just very unexpected for a jazz tune. And it's not always like they're totally something new altogether, but just as far as like a jazz composer, I don't know, like Witch Hunt, yeah, I don't know. I won't go into it, but it's like, I don't know, there's just a lot of unexpectedness that I feel when I listen to this album. There was one more thing I was going to say. This album has a little bit of concept. Witch Hunt, Fee Fi Fo Fum, Speak No Evil. Kind of like a fantasy-ish feeling throughout, which also that's a little unexpected. Kind of like Herbie with the Speak Like a Child, Maiden Voyage. Kind of like a little bit of a concept going on there. Okay, here we go. This is the album I really wanted to talk about. So, Etcetera. This is not on a lot of people's radar, and it's definitely my favorite Wayne Shorter album. And it went unreleased for 13 years. So I don't know why Alfred Lion did that. I don't know. I would say it took me a little bit of time to warm up to this album, but now it's like just one of my favorite albums of all time. I will say on the first track, his playing, and I assume it's intentional, it like from the get-go, it just sounds like a slightly out of tune. And I think originally that was a barrier to me like connecting with the music. It's like a little sour or something. I assume that was intentional, and it's just on the first track. So Barracudas is track 4, and that's a Gil Evans tune. And for me, the rhythmic feel, it's in 6/8, and just the way the rhythm feels on that song is just, I don't know, I can't think of anything like it. I don't know how to explain it. And sometimes when things are so good, it's just like hard to talk about. So specifically check that out. Indian Song is in 5. So that's kind of interesting. This album also has this, I really like this blend of like free and stability, kind of like commingling. So Etcetera and Indian Song are the most like free, and then the other ones are the most grounded. I would also say Joe Chambers is the drummer on this one. And sometimes he feels a little bit like Tony Williams and Elvin Jones like put together. So it's like, I've heard that before. I've heard Elvin do that. I've heard Tony Williams do that. But he feels, certainly than Tony Williams, like a little bit more in the pocket, in the groove. And sometimes he like takes both their ideas and makes it sound better than either of them. So I love his playing. Like I could listen to this album and just listen to Joe Chambers drumming. So good. Okay. And then lastly, this is a little bit later. I can't remember when this was. Yeah, it doesn't say on the back. Adam's Apple. So I don't know if this is like 66. That's my guess, but I could be wrong on that. So interestingly, Miles's group is getting more and more avant-garde, and specifically like Tony Williams is like pushing that. So like Sorcerer, the album Sorcerer has a lot of stuff that is pretty free. I think the track Limbo on that is just like, whoa, okay, this is kind of another level of that. And so that, and I feel like that kind of was progressing over time. And if you listen to like Miles's live stuff with that group, so there's like Miles in Europe, I think that's like 1967. It's like pretty out there, and it's pretty free. And Adam's Apple is notable for being kind of like not that, and there's not that much of that influence in there. And this, I would probably say, is one of his most popular albums. Adam's Apple is like kind of a funky, danceable tune. I don't know how much, if there was any pressure at the time to do that stuff, because that was like the stuff, the only thing that would like ever get in a jukebox at the time. And at the time, or early on when I started listening to this record, that wasn't a sound I gravitated to. I like it now, just with repeated listenings. Track 3, El Gaucho, assume that's how you pronounce it. Crazily, there's a track called Penelope on Etcetera, and El Gaucho is like a fast Latin, and Penelope on Etcetera is like a slow ballad thing. And if you listen to the melody, it's like almost exactly the same. And it would be super interesting to know, is that an accident or on purpose? I don't know. And then Footprints. So there's this version of Footprints, and then there's the Footprints on Miles Smiles, so it's debatable which is better. This one, again, is more grounded, and the Miles Smiles version is, changing time signature and more floaty and going different places. And then Chief Crazy Horse is apparently about Coltrane. So, sorry I couldn't pick 3. They're just also good. Okay, well, I hope you enjoy checking out Wayne Shorter, listening to those records, and thank you for watching.